Right, let's get straight into it. Welcome to this GCSE Explainer on C1900 to present, Warfare and British Society in the Modern Era. Today we're doing a direct, no-nonsense review to get you absolutely ready for your exam. No tangents, just exactly what you need to know.
Here's the plan for today. We've got 4 main sections. First up, the nature of warfare. Then the experience of war. Third, a case study on the Somme. And finally, a case study on the Iraq War. Let's dive in.
Section 1. The nature of warfare. Right off the bat, the modern era totally changed military structure. We're talking brand new units, like dedicated logistics corps just to keep these massive armies supplied, and bomb disposal units for entirely new technical threats. But look, the absolute headline of this period, the weapons revolution. It's marked by 5 huge shifts. First, machine guns. These literally turned defensive positions into absolute slaughterhouses. Second, tanks, which were actually invented specifically to break the brutal deadlock of trench warfare. Third, chemical and nuclear weapons, bringing destruction on a scale no one had ever seen before. Fourth, radar and aircrafts, completely taking the fight to the skies. And finally, computerized warfare, where precision and surveillance totally changed the game on the modern battlefield.
But it wasn't just the weapons that changed. The whole shape of conflict shifted. You absolutely need to know the concept of guerrilla warfare for your exams. This is a conflict involving insurgents and irregular forces rather than 2 uniformed armies lining up on an open battlefield like they used to. It's a massive, fundamental shift in 21st century conflict.
Now, here is a crucial exam tip for you. If you get an essay asking, say, how far did warfare change, you want to build your answer right around this specific contrast. You start with mass industrial slaughter, like the Somme, and contrast it all the way to the technology and precision of the Iraq War. Showing the examiner you grasp this massive, overarching shift, that is guaranteed to impress.
Moving on to Section 2, the experience of war.
As warfare evolved, the way it impacted the people actually fighting, and, crucially, the civilians back home, transformed completely. For example, military recruitment changed dramatically. For a long time, it was all about voluntary recruitment. But then, we see the shift to conscription and national service. The state literally forced men to fight. At the same time, women were recruited into the war effort in totally unprecedented ways, working in factories, auxiliary services, and eventually combat support roles. And then, by the end of the century, the pendulum swings right back, and Britain returns to a fully professional, volunteer army.
And the civilian experience completely flipped upside down too. The home front meant civilians were no longer just watching from the sidelines. The impact was just massive. Rationing literally controlled what was on your dinner plate. Bombing brought the actual battlefield right to civilian doorsteps. Evacuation completely uprooted kids from major cities. Then you have censorship and propaganda, which became highly organized tools to manage public morale on an industrial scale. And looking past 1945, there was this constant, heavy fear of nuclear war. Conflict was shaping everyday life even when nobody was firing a single shot.
Okay, another vital exam tip for you here. When a question asks about the impact of war on civilians, please don't just pick one thing and write your entire essay on it. This era gives you so much material. To secure those top marks, you've got to show the whole range. Talk about rationing, mention the bombing, discuss conscription, and hit on propaganda. Really show the examiner you see the entire big picture.
All right, Section 3, Case Study, the Somme, 1916.
So this is General Sir Douglas Haig. He was the commander of the British forces during this pivotal battle. To understand his decisions, you have to understand the context he was stuck in. Trench warfare had basically created a horrific, bloody stalemate on the Western Front. The Somme was launched partly to try and finally break that deadlock, and also to take the pressure off the French forces who were fighting nearby at Verdun.
For soldiers, like the Royal Irish Rifles, the grim reality of those trenches was just inescapable. Now, the British plan for the Somme relied on a massive, week-long artillery bombardment. The whole idea was to obliterate the German dugouts and completely cut the barbed wire before the infantry even advanced. But here's the thing. That bombardment fundamentally failed. The deep defensive dugouts survived, and the barbed wire was left largely intact. And the result of that failure? 57,000. When the British troops went over the top on July 1, 1916, the German machine gunners simply climbed up from their dugouts and opened fire. Over 57,000 British casualties on a single day. To this day, it remains the bloodiest single day in British military history.
This horrific situation perfectly defines the concept of a war of attrition. Because despite those catastrophic first-day losses, General Haig just kept the offensive going for months.
The final grim mathematics of the Somme are honestly hard to wrap your head around. 141 days of fighting, a maximum advance of just 7 miles, and over 1 million casualties combined across all sides. It was just a brutal, relentless grinding down of men and resources.
But wait, here is a critical nuance for your exam. Do not, I repeat, do not just write off the Somme as a simple story of complete incompetence. Top grades require you to show that General Haig and the British commanders learned incredibly hard, painful lessons about industrial warfare from this failure. And those lessons actually shaped later, successful Allied tactics. So, describing it as a costly failure that contributed to eventual learning is a much stronger, much more historically accurate line to take than just dismissing it as a pointless disaster.
Let's pivot to Section 4. Case Study, the Iraq War 2003. Just look at the deployment of the Challenger 2 tank during Operation Telic. It instantly highlights a totally new era. We're definitely not looking at muddy trenches and foot soldiers charging into machine gun fire anymore, are we? This is high-tech, technology-driven warfare. It's all about heavy armor, incredible speed, and just overwhelming technological superiority.
The most dramatic change here is the sheer speed of it all. Remember, the Somme took 141 days to move just 7 miles. But in the 2003 Iraq War, coalition forces achieved their initial military objectives for the invasion in about 1 month. The difference in pace is literally staggering.
So how is that rapid success even possible? Well, it comes down to exact modern warfare traits. Satellite guidance systems allowed for absolute pinpoint positioning. Real-time intelligence gave commanders immediate awareness of what was happening on the ground. Precision-guided weapons meant they could hit targets with an accuracy that would have been unimaginable to a soldier in 1916. And of course, overwhelming air dominance meant the coalition completely controlled the skies.
Before we wrap up, though, take note of this really vital distinction: winning the battle versus winning the war. While technology absolutely revolutionized how battles are fought and won quickly, like in that initial Iraq invasion, the historical sources remind us that the war's long aftermath raised massive, ongoing questions. The human cost and the deep political consequences of conflict remain incredibly complex issues in both 1916 and 2003. Basically, technology changed the tools, but it didn't necessarily change the lasting fallout.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question for your revision. How significant was technology in changing the experience of warfare in the 20th and 21st centuries? I want you to take everything we've just talked about today, from the bloody attrition of the Somme all the way to the precision strikes of Iraq, and apply it directly to this exact question. Master that contrast, always remember the human element, and you are going to be ready. Keep up the great studying, and I'll catch you next time.